Welcome everyone to our digital summit on fashion. I want to thank everyone who's part of the GLF community who's joining us again. You've been a part of the conversations for the past year, and this is going to be an exciting new one. And to those of you who are new, welcome. The GLF Digital Summit and the Global Landscapes Forum in general is a place that is owned by everyone and owned by no one at the same time. We try to cover topics that are really key and upcoming when it comes to landscapes and sustainable development and how we're living and how it impacts this world. And that's why today we are talking about fashion. And we're going to hear from two fashion industry insiders who are going to discuss what the global fashion industry means for rights. Rights of the people who make the clothes, but also the rights of the earth, which is where our clothes come from and where they ultimately go back to when we're done with them. So according to the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, more than 100 billion articles of clothing are put into the world each year. And more than half of them end up in landfills within 12 months, so essentially a year. And it's not unlikely that a simple cotton t-shirt that you might be wearing right now required up to 2,700 liters to produce. It's cotton coming from a monoculture plantation with pesticides. It's bleaching or dyeing, causing chemical runoff into rivers and water resources. And it's human makers that are working for subpar wages in dangerous conditions. And then on top of that, it's shipping across the world, emitting large amounts of greenhouse gas emissions into the atmosphere. We've all become extremely used to seeing tags on our clothes stating they were made in countries far away from our own, Morocco or Italy, and this demonstrates the fact that the fashion industry is one of the most polluting industries in the world. So this conversation is one where we hope to start making progress on ending this vicious cycle. What are the strategies being used today, and how do we give integrity back to the clothes that we wear, and to the people and the places who make them? So first, to kick this off, I want to introduce our speakers. We have two individuals here with us today. The first of which is Christian Smith. He is an expert in sustainable fashion. He's conducted in-depth research on the rise of fast fashion and the current pressure on fashion companies to move towards sustainability. As a policy coordinator for a nonprofit, he's currently focusing on improving the rights of fashion industry workers, from their safety to their dignity to their pay. And throughout his work, he's developed an expertise in examining supply chains within the fashion industry and how these adjustments you make in a supply chain can improve the lives of people and the planet. And then secondly, I'm very glad to welcome Kavita Parmar, who is the founder of the IOU project, a brand that makes each beautiful piece of clothing it sells from a unique piece of an Indian woven textile called lungi, if I'm pronouncing it right, which is hand woven in India and then assembled into a garment in Europe. And IOU allows its buyers to trace back its purchases back to the very weaver of their piece, enabling a deep personal connection with the finished product. It's something that I don't think I necessarily feel in the clothes that I wear, but it's something that I think we should all have a right to feeling. And this brand was born out of Kavita's far-reaching knowledge about fashion history, but also human behavior and supply chains. So I am gonna put this disclaimer out there. I am not an expert in fashion. I have no idea what the impact of the clothes I'm wearing are today, have for the environment. And some of our viewers will be in the same position. So I think it's a great opportunity for us to keep an open mind and to learn about something new and figure out how we can make more sustainable choices in the future. So I first want to ask Kavita, how did you first learn about this textile called lungi, and what drew you to it so deeply that you wanted to build an entire company around it?
Well, thank you first of all to invite me to have this conversation. Christian and I have known each other for a while, and have this conversation over a long period of time, and how it's evolved. So it's really exciting to get back here in 2019 and have a conversation with him involved in our working very specifically on worker rights, which I think are so fundamental at the moment that we're at. So I've been in this industry pretty much all my life. Lucky enough to start working in it when I was all of 17 as my first job, and really came into it as a total coincidence. I was not interested in fashion. Like most 16-year-olds, wanted to change the world, study political science, and be Che Guevara. And none of that happened. And I ended up needing to work. The first job I got was fashion, and it totally opened my eyes to the magic that it was to actually dream up of something and have it made. Make it, have someone weave something that you had in your head. So I saw the first 3D printer, as I always say to people, I was able to work with handloom weavers from day one when I got into the industry. So it's been quite a journey. I've lived in the Far East for a long time. I also participated when most of the business was taken overseas in that area. So started a sourcing company, learned a lot about what that meant. In the beginning, it was really exciting because it meant lots of progress, lots of interesting jobs, but very quickly was able to see myself the impact it had in the local landscape, not only environmental footprint, but also footprint in human behavior. You had lots of really highly skilled people in all these areas in the Far East. Some were generational weavers, printers, dyers, who had to forget that craft and actually learn how to press a button on a machine, which meant, yes, it's true in the short term, they got $50 more. But the reality of the situation was they had to travel sometimes 500 to 1,000 miles away from home, live in conditions that were really sad, and not only that, work hours that just were not human. And eventually what we've seen is it's a race to the bottom, and, you know, then very quickly the industry started looking and living on that logic of very cheap labor. So China was not cheap enough. We moved to Bangladesh or Bhutan or the next cheap labor place. It's Africa now. So I've watched all of this happen in front of me for the last 20 years. And in the year 2010, quite frustrated with where I was at, just crying and harping about this, I decided to do something, and I really did not want to create a brand. The IU project was created as an example of what we could do with technology and how we could actually give transparency and especially a voice to the worker. So we built a platform ourselves, an open source platform, where we wanted to show people how we could put every single footprint online. People could see who this person was. I was very interested in the human part because I think the environmental part was being addressed by many other companies, and plus the human being is so relevant to me, right? If you make human beings responsible and proud of what they do, the environment follows, because I don't think anybody wants to do something wrong. I do believe in that. And very quickly, and the reason why I went to Lungi was when I started the project, most of the times when I worked with artists and communities, one of the things I'm told is that it's not scalable, that it's something that you can make very small quantities of. And I wanted to show that wasn't true. Lungi, which is the Madras check, is made in South India. And even today, there's 250,000 weavers in the community that I work with. So they can actually weave 1 billion meters a month if someone were to ask for it. So the idea was to actually show people that we do have a capacity of a lot of human beings around the planet who have an incredible skill set, and we are not using that. We're not allowing them to participate on a fair basis in the industry.
You're winning me over. I think I'm really interested in hearing where this comes from. And Christian, for you, what first sparked your interest in fast fashion? Because I would assume many people, this is something that brings you joy. You can buy something fast for cheap and continue to refresh your wardrobe. So was this ever part of your own lifestyle? How did you feel about it?
Yeah, I guess I'll just say that I'm actually not interested in fast fashion. And I would say to an extent, I'm not even interested in fashion, but I am interested in style. And I was brought up to wear good clothing, not necessarily expensive, and also to appreciate the things that you have in your wardrobe. So that has always been with me, but I think it's my travels that have really brought me to this point where I understand how interconnected we are as a people. I've lived in Japan, Brazil. I grew up in West Africa, in Sierra Leone. I've lived in the US, and everyone wears clothes. Everyone cares about how they look. But I also learn about all the things that happen behind the clothing. Workers' rights, environmental issues, but also on the consumer side, the the way we pump clothing into the market to help this insatiable desire for people to acquire more all the time. So it's really a culmination of both my travels, but also the more I learned about consumer culture, economics, how the world works. This seemed like a good area to combine all that knowledge as we search for a better way to do things.
So as a follow-up to that, you're touching on kind of travel and how the geographic duality is present in fast fashion, and it's often made in developing countries, it's bought in developing countries, it's worn a few developed countries. Some of us wear them a few times, and then it's quickly disposed of in a landfill back in a developing country again. And it's an extraordinary toxic lifestyle that I think is reflective of the great inequalities that are present in every industry in the world, not just fashion. But in terms of changing that paradigm, do you think this means ending fast fashion, or are there ways that we can change fast fashion from within to reconfigure the system?
I don't think I'd be bold in saying that I think fast fashion must end. I don't think that it's possible to have a sustainable textile industry and create a rapid market of renewal as well, especially when you have India and China with increasing purchasing powers in their own geographies. And no matter how much we decide we're going to recycle, upcycle, use plant-based materials, it all at some point takes virgin resource, and it also involves the shipping around of goods across the globe and that type of thing. So I think that fast fashion is on its way out, but whether that takes 10 to 15 to 20 years, I can't tell you. What I'm really interested in is, though, that as this transition takes place, how do we ensure that workers are not left behind? How do we ensure that as we move production, for example, from the Far East to Africa or to back to Europe? I mean, there's talk now of fast factories based in Europe that can do a very quick turnaround of products. How do we ensure that the workers who were waiting for their turn to take part in economic development, they also need to benefit as well? So that's why the fight for higher wages in the industry, better working conditions, enabling and ensuring that people are able to participate in life in a humane way, get education. All those things are really important because they will not get the chance like China did to use fashion as a springboard for a better economy. And in the time that we have right now, it's really crucial that we can speed up those wage rises so that there's a better economic return in the long term. And just to kind of add to that, we're already seeing issues with regards to climate change and refugees. There's Syria, how that was kind of dictated or kickstarted by climate change. Tunisia, Arab Spring, that also has links to climate change, and that's the refugee side of things. But if we think about work not being available in these countries with the massive populations that they have, you start understanding these links between global movement of people versus the opportunity to earn and participate in an economy that functions both in terms of job, but also in terms of giving them the means to educate themselves. So for me, it's really about moving to this type of world, understanding the system in which fashion is in, and moving away from fast fashion as a result of knowing all these things that are taking place.
Yeah, and I think what you touch on, perhaps, with when it comes to the inequality in workers' rights, that's the biggest, I think, thing that resonates with people. And there's a variety of reasons around new information around that, and closer understanding and a reveal of what happened, I guess, behind what was kind of in our front of our faces. People have really identified with this as an issue and not wanting to contribute to that in your direct kind of purchasing. And Kavita, in a TED Talk you gave in 2013, you touched on this a bit, or at least talked about how the Industrial Revolution dehumanized people's connection to work. And how do you think the Industrial Revolution has changed people's connection to their clothes and the things that's closest to our bodies, but also, I guess, is not something we feel connected to anymore?
Well, the truth is the Industrial Revolution, which, brought a lot of good things with it, which brought a lot of possibility for many people who didn't have access. But one of the hardest thing that it, I think the most damaging thing that it did was it brought all our focus and made us think that success is quantity. That's how the Industrial Revolution works. It was about, if you were good, the quantity is how you were successful. Even in your life, the more things you had, the more money you made. So it was all about accumulation of quantity. So it was the words that we used, right? Efficiency, productivity. Those are the words that became mantras during the Industrial Revolution. So now, me being very, I would say I'm optimistic. I like to think I'm a bit of a utopic thinker, because right now, as we're on this cusp of this incredible moment where we've got AI, robotics, machine learning, all of these incredible things that we don't even know what they mean most of the time, right there. I was just recently listening to an MIT professor give a talk, and it shocked me so much. And he said something which made me sort of think about how important it is that people like us from the arts and craft field get involved in this moment, in the very ethics, in this building of the new system that we're building, because we do need a different system, and we have an opportunity to build it right now. We have tools, and the thing is, are we going to build a new system that has different values? So that's one of the reasons why I so agree with Christian that we cannot really, and I say that every time in all my talks, we cannot fix this old system. In fact, we have to stop being so nostalgic about it and trying to fix it. I hate the word sustainable growth. I think that's a total misnomer. A problem that we have in society right now is that we think growth is everything, and we don't live on a planet that's continuously growing. It's a closed system. It's a symbiotic system. We need to once again learn to be symbiotic with our systems that we live in. I think the interesting part of what's happening with technology today is it allows you to build those systems, those symbiotic systems that before couldn't be built because we didn't have the technology, we didn't have the means. A company like IOU would not have been able to come to fruition in 2000, but 2010, I could build a platform on my own, something that didn't exist, and create something like that. So I think today it's way cheaper than that. So it's really, really quite interesting. Once again, the focus to me is reevaluate. What are our values? Forget the old system, not try to greenwash it, not try to improve it. Think about this new system that we're building and fill it with the values that we really want. We need to ask ourselves the question, what is it that makes us really happy as human beings? And I think other human beings is going to be a big part of that answer. We don't want to live on our own. We don't want to be a society of very few billionaires and lots of people with no money, so we come back to worker rights. We cannot. Once again, in Europe itself, I live in Southern Europe, and here in moments, even though our economy is growing once again, you notice the biggest wealth discrepancy that we've ever had. The few people who had money are getting a lot more, and most people who are middle class are actually losing their ability to even buy. And like Kristen said, I saw a robot. It was just in development still, which can make 3,000 t-shirts in 3 hours. So if we were just going to go and say, oh, we don't want children sewing, it's going to be very easy for the fast fashion companies to set up offices and companies in Denmark or Amsterdam itself, because they'll probably hire 3 to 4 people to make those 3,000 t-shirts and say they're bringing jobs back. But that's the question we need to ask. Do we need to buy a $3 t-shirt? And where is it coming from? And the person who's making it, is he getting or she getting the right price for it? So that's kind of where I think that we have a huge opportunity to stop talking about the sustainable growth and to start imagining and dreaming about a new system that could be so exciting to build with the technology that we have today, and actually allow for lots of people, 1 billion people in this world today have not connected to the internet. All these people have abilities that are sometimes multi-generational, skill sets that are getting lost. Last time I read a report, in 25 years, we have these endangered human skills that are going to disappear because no one's learning them anymore. Whether it's women in the mountains of Peru who are doing a specific kind of weaving, or in Oaxaca, or in Chiapas, or in India. So we could actually use technology to get work to them and have something of our own, personal and beautiful, and know the story behind it. So that's why I'm actually quite positive about building this new system.
It's lovely to hear. There's I don't know, I feel like this world, sometimes the people who are really at the forefront of creating solutions and making new change are those positive, optimistic individuals who believe we can. And I think perhaps maybe that's the difference of realizing whether you can or can't. Yeah, it's just nice to hear that this is true in all fields and industries. And Christian, in your work now in policy making around workers' rights, can you talk about the main issues that you think you seek to improve at the moment? Pay, safety, hours. What is the real problem? And does any of your work focus on fostering the buyer's relationship to the fashion industry workers, or is that something that is probably too far out and more personal and intimate than what you can achieve in policy at the moment?
I think I'll just speak generally because I think there's a shift taking place in the industry that's interesting. I think it should go a little bit further, but I think it's into the right direction. Over the last 25 years or so, it's really been an audit-based industry. So let's go into a factory, let's tick some boxes and make sure that they've got all their ducks in a row. Of course, they've got their ducks in a row. They knew you were coming. But even if you find things, the whole aspect of remediation wasn't really done properly, or it was done very much with a sticky plaster type of approach. What I find interesting right now is there's a realization that in order to have long-term systemic changes in these facilities, you actually need the workers to be involved. You need whether that's unions, whether that's worker representation, whether that's a management committee with workers included. There has to be some kind of dialogue between all the actors in a factory in order to fix things. So when you look at things like wages, overtime, hours, health and safety issues, we can address those things individually. But we see that they aren't long-term changes. But once you get people involved, you can actually start to help people understand that they too have a stake in the way that a factory operates, and they have a responsibility to themselves and to their colleagues to help make things better. And that once you have that in place, you start to see a change in how factories operate, both in terms of how people feel about working in a particular environment, but also in terms of the usual metrics, efficiency and absenteeisms and those things like that really represent the economic paradigm in which we live. So for me, there are lots of individual things that we work on, but I think the real key thing, the key driver of change going forward, is the ability to form organizations, organizing committees that allow dialogue between the different actors in a factory.
Can you hear me?
I can.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Sorry. I had a technical difficulty there. But we just got a question from the audience, and I'm not sure which one of you would best be positioned to answer it. But it's Hamza from Tunisia, who's very interested in this topic and would like to know, more practically, if buying clothes from vintage shops can decrease the bad effect done by the fashion industry on the planet. Yes or no?
Well, I personally always tell people that that's the second thing one should go to. One, try not to buy. That's the first one. Mm-hmm. If you can avoid it, don't buy anything new. We really don't need new clothes. Nobody does. We could all live without. If we don't buy anything, we could probably get by a couple of years without having going naked on the street. Two, vintage is a very, very good option. Local and vintage, to me, are my second go-to for most people, and that has the least impact because the product's already made and it's out there. And you'd be surprised. I mean, not anymore, but I remember going to vintage shops where you'd look at clothes made in the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and they're beautifully made. Unfortunately, now a lot of times when you go to vintage shops, you get things from the 90s and early 2000s, and they're not so beautifully made. So yeah, vintage to me would definitely be a good response.
And to kind of go into the work that you're doing in the IOU project, we see this as a kind of interesting bridge between fast fashion and couture and the exclusive upper end of fashion where brands like Dior or Chanel make a single garment for one buyer. Yet your garments are affordable, accessible, and wearable, but they're still tailor-made and allow you to connect with the maker. Is this a tough business model to operate, or do you think that it's one that brands can more readily adopt at this moment?
I think I propose it as a future, as truly the model for everyone to operate on, because for two reasons. One, it allows for creativity in terms of allows for a lot more artisan communities and small makers to get involved and produce. Because the minute you go into making large quantities of anything, capital intensive, infrastructure comes into play, and then you leave out a lot of the small factories or small makers or individual artisans who can't compete. So I really do believe that's the way to the future, and that's why we're running this experiment, and so transparently so other people can actually see and learn from it. Now we've gone on and we've actually, what you don't see on the platform's truly dedicated to Madras because it's given us so much goodwill and actually also helped the Madras community. But I am doing a wholesale line that I sell in Japan in 40 shops, where we are doing work with communities like the Harris Tweed community. We're working with people in Spain who are starting again with the wool coming from the Transformance. We're working in Mexico. In fact, I'm wearing a dress that I just got from Mexican community near Oaxaca. We're working on local natural dye projects. So I do think that the future should be that way. And when you think about it, about 80 years ago, that's what it was. You didn't really see two people wearing the same clothes anywhere. People's clothes was a language, was a way to express yourself. So you don't want to be exact like anyone else. It had to do with where you came from, or it had to do with how you felt that day, or it had to do with the tribe you're from, or what you were fighting for. Clothing was a way to communicate. And now what has happened is it makes me laugh when I see the anti-fascist jackets being sold at H&M. So you're taking away what things mean. You're culturally appropriating. These things meant something to people. So that's the part where, to me, it's really important that we go back to this form of producing. When you think about it, where a company like Facebook or a company like Uber do not own it. Uber is the largest transport company in the world. They don't own a single piece of, cars. Facebook's largest media company in the world doesn't make any media. It's become platforms that allow for individuals to actually exchange and interchange work. Why could a textile factory not be like that? So that's sort of what my dream is, and what I'm working towards building now is a Wikipedia of artisans, which anyone could use. So our work is to go into these places where no one has done the hard work, which is to go there and meet the people and create that, pages for them, so that anyone from big companies, small companies, and individual people can connect and buy product from them, which way they get rid of the intermediaries. And plus they can come together and actually even, address mass market. We just had 3 years ago, I was working on a project with Nike, and they saw this Harris Tweed fabric that I was working with. And they gave an order to the Harris Tweed weaver that I was working with, who couldn't obviously do the 10,000 meters that Nike needed, but he got together with the entire island, and they didn't manage to produce the order. It's just doing it in a very different way, and Nike decided to actually continue buying directly from them. So it was a really beautiful moment of seeing artisanal workers getting together and being able to address mass market. So I am a big proponent of that for the future. I think that is real luxury, and I don't think luxury should no longer be associated with money or the price tag that it has. Luxury should be the experience, and that's why no longer to me Dior or Louis Vuitton are luxury, because anyone has access to them, whether it's the real or the fake. To me, it's like pretentious. It's a very pretentious market. It's not really addressing real luxury. They've taken the word luxury and made it mean something else. I would like to go back to luxury being a walk in the park, luxury being what every single human being could actually try and aim for.
And I'd like to ask, how are people reacting to this? Because as you're sharing this message now, it seems like it is natural. I mean, when you even wear something of your own, you see that is an expression of you and who you are. And I think any person who's seen someone wear the exact same outfit as them knows how that you feel in that moment. And you can identify then with what your clothes can mean to you and how you want to express that in an authentic way. Do you feel that your message is resonating with people, or where do you see it becoming a sticking point or seeing some barriers?
To me, without any doubt, it resonates. I mean, we started in the year 2010. I started you started using a hashtag was whomademyclothes. Of course, back then there was no Rana Plaza. It was 3 years before Rana Plaza. had happened, no one was really interested. It was only, unfortunately, after Rana Plaza that the hashtag took off, and the girls at Fashion Revolution, who did such an amazing job in making it into everybody's a bigger issue. And last year, 60 million tweets were done. So I haven't sold 60 million pieces, but that wasn't the point. With IOU, from the day I started, what we wanted to do was change consciousness, change people's way of looking at things. So there, I would say we've totally succeeded. Now, as far as the business side of it, it's not easy, because we don't have, one of the things you come across is distribution. And the unfortunate part is that most distribution channels are totally beholden to big industry. So it's very hard for small brands to get to the public. We even have public trying to get to us, which is, it's more complicated for people even of interest to buy, to be able to buy us. Countries like India, China, most of the times they can't afford, because even though my shirt might be not so expensive, by the time it gets there with all the shipping and the import costs, etc., it becomes ridiculously expensive. So we still have a lot of things to fight against and to fight through, because distribution is the biggest challenge that we have, because 99% of distribution is owned by big industry, whether it's called the luxury industry or the fast fashion industry. So that, I would say, is the biggest challenge that we have right now.
And Christian, you said you weren't particularly interested in fast fashion, or I guess drawn to fashion from this get. So do you kind of resonate with the changing the consciousness? Do you have this approach with your own kind of lifestyle and clothing choices, or how do you feel in relationship to kind of Kavita's work, which feels very personal and human? And I have a feeling that potentially policies don't have the same thing, but I could be wrong.
I do what I do out of that connection. I feel that as a minority, there's an embedded racial element within the industry as well. If you notice that most of the people making the clothing are brown and dark skinned, most of the people consuming clothing of that manner are not. And so I come from, I wouldn't say quite an activist, but a position of empathy, where I realize that it's not, right now they're doing the same thing in Africa, and it's going to spread across Africa as it did. Well, let's see how quickly, but it does. So I come from a very personal perspective. In terms of how it affects how I buy clothing, I really don't buy very often. I am geeky, so when I do buy, I like to know where my things come from, and I actually have a shirt from the IU project. And that's partly because I like to understand, where have the clothes been? Where were they made? What is it made of? Is it made of polyester? What's the fabric like? All those things. But that comes really from my mother raising me to appreciate good quality items. I also have a one-in, one-out policy. So I only buy something when I really need it. When I have a pair of trousers that has a ridiculous hole in it, then I'll go out and buy a replacement pair of trousers. And then when it comes to buying, luxury items, whatever luxury might be, and you have to consider forking out a considerable amount of money, then you think differently as well. You think of cost per wear. Yes, this jacket might cost me 200 euros, 250 euros, but how long am I going to wear it for? If you wear it, over a 6-year period, every winter, then the cost of that jacket is nothing. So I think the way that we relate to clothing is changing, and it will change even further as we become more aware of the impact of clothing, but also what we can do to alleviate that impact, while also keeping much more of a personal sense of style. And going to what Kavita said before, about people have been more individualistic style-wise previously. What I find really funny right now is that we are supposed to have a plethora of choice in the way we shop. You go to H&M, it's like a different collection every couple of weeks. You go to Primark or Zara, it's all about new stuff in as much as possible. But you walk down the streets and everyone looks the same. It's dull, because it fosters no creativity. And so I think that as we start to see the effects, but also embrace this idea of being able to express ourselves more in a different way. We will see a different industry emerge. And part of that is almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy, because as you move things and you're able to create things close to home, people become more interested in the items and the way they're created, which will probably help people become much more creative themselves about how they dress, because that closeness also creates that connection.
Just to add a little bit to what Kristian's saying also, it's funny, I travel a lot, and I'm sure that same thing happens to him. Whenever I go anywhere now, it's, I see the hipsters everywhere. It doesn't matter whether I'm in Mumbai or I'm in Africa or I'm in Mexico. And it's shocking because you think about how quickly, these trends spread, and how we've actually lost our own identity as who we are, where we come from, and sort of adapt these memes that are really of no content. They have no value because it just becomes nothing but a caricature. So that's kind of where I'm hoping, like you said, self-fulfilling. When I got to Madrid, I remember I grew up with a mother who was yogi and Ayurveda, and so I got here and I would start looking for things like trying to find aloe vera or curcuma, which is a turmeric, and it was impossible. And now that's all changed. And now every little supermarket you go to has a huge aisle of fair trade and ecological food. That wasn't there before when I got here. So that's only happened because customers demand it. So I think the power of the consumer is something that, even though we hear about it, we don't believe it. And we end up falling in this trap of being cheap and saying, oh, we don't know, what can I do? I have so many things to do. I can't really make the choice. You can. Brands are listening to you all the time. They know everything you click on. They know everything you've watched. If they are spying on us, well, let's just tell them what we want. Let's be loud about what it is that we want. And then the little few dollars that we have, let's vote with our money the society we want to build in. I assure you, if anyone local, let's assume wherever you are in Germany or Holland or Spain, I tell people in Spain, we've got the largest fast fashion company in the world. If people were to walk into Zara, I'm sure if 20 people were to walk in and say, where's the stuff that's made in Spain, that information goes back to the head office and they'll start doing more made in Spain stuff. So, right now, since we are being looked at, as George Orwell warned us, why don't we make sure we are loud enough and make our voice heard, just as that little girl, 15-year-old wonderful girl, is doing with Fridays for Future, and so many young people are joining that. So I think we have such incredible power that we ourselves are being lazy about. And we like to blame the bigger companies. The big companies are not going to sell us sustainability in a nice package. It's something that we have to build together by voting with every cent. So every time you go out there and buy a $3 t-shirt, think about that you can't open your mouth and ask for a reasonably paid job if you're not willing to pay for a product that someone could reasonably live off.
Yeah, and I think what you just touched on, sometimes you see this in many cultures or habits and things that we see happen in society, that it sometimes takes the next generation that comes out of it to start to really see beyond the glimmer and the facade and say, yeah, I'm passionate about making a difference, and I see the impact of this choice. And perhaps those from one generation feel like oh no, this is really cheap and this is what I want. I have hope in the younger generation being able to really make more environmentally conscious choices, and have a certain sense of internalized responsibility around how they can build the future that they want to have. I've worked as the youth coordinator to the Global Landscapes Forum, and have seen, depending on who I'm discussing with, about the importance of how you invest and where you choose to put your money, and having sustainable investments, or even going to the grocery store and shopping for different food options that are local. You have, I think, a great reception when it comes to the younger generation. And I do have hope that this is something that we can start building a new culture, and a new lifestyle and a new paradigm of how we're living in our environment, that includes what we wear. And I actually, while listening to you both, have had a glimpse of what the future could look like, with this individualized, kind of personalized sense of kind of connection to who you are, but also to your clothes and to your place and your life, and how that all plays out And it does feel, it does look like a more authentic vision, and a much better vision to be living in than, the world that we see today. I think we all have a responsibility to make that better.
I know a lot of times the conversation and plus the media, it's so negative because it's so easy to sell the dystopic version of the world, right? Black Mirror, and you look around and there's stuff happening that, oh gosh, it really is true, or, Handmaid's Tale. And those are tales of caution, and we can't get depressed. We need to look at them for what they are. They're tales of caution, but at the same time, we need to build a dream. And I always say it's nobody but the utopians who will give us a dream to walk towards. And then the realists will make it happen. But we do need to dream. And right now, this moment that we're at, we're getting these exciting new tools. We need to get involved with these tools and stop complaining about, yes, it's true, we're being watched and we're being used. Let's turn this around. Let's use these tools for our benefit. Let's be activists as we've never been before. Let's be political with everything that we do, because we cannot walk away from this incredible gift that we have, this leap that humanity is going to take, human life 3.0, where soon enough, apparently, we're going to have augmented intelligence, and we'll be another breed, another kind of humans. Let's go back and, do an inquiry into values and who it is that we want to be. And each one of us needs to do that. I don't care whether you're, a painter or a teacher or a social activists, or we can't leave it to these nerds in Silicon Valley to decide what our future looks like. So we need to all get involved.
I have to say, I'm definitely much more on the Black Mirror side of things.
I knew you were going to say that.
but I do have hope, and that hope comes in the form of an understanding that people are seeking connection, that there is a wider change taking place, I think, as people try to find out who they are, what it means to connect, and what it means to get away from sitting behind a computer all the time. There's a lot of loss that we've replaced with consumerism, and the rise of things like yoga and healthy eating, and the decrease in the amount of teenagers, for example, that consume alcohol and drugs. Those are all leading towards a very different world. And as Kavita says, we have the opportunity to shape that world, to shape the values that we want that world to have, and also to give people the tools that they can use to help them create and develop and participate in that world. I think one of the issues we've had in the last few years is a lot of the doom and gloom messaging. Polar bears are dying. Poor polar bears, they always get picked on. The climate change, seas rising. It's always doom and gloom, but there is never that vision for the possible world that we could have. And I think as we pull together and we start to understand what the technological benefits are, what the reinvention of different industries can be, what the access of internet means to people, then we can start to really understand, wait a second, this means that we don't have to go shopping. This means that we don't have to work 40, 60, 80-hour weeks. This means that we can participate in the growing of our own food and connect to the earth. This gives us the opportunity to reimagine a much more positive world, in which we feel valued and we appreciate the value that other people have as well.
So true.
But mostly Black Mirror.
Yes. I'm obsessed with Black Mirror. But also, like what you said, at every moment of technological advancement, whether it was fire or even the motor car or the airplane, there always was this moment where there were, the naysayers, and there was, the people who would say, "Oh my God," and each technology had the ability. Fire could burn your house, your entire city, or you could turn a home, hearth into. You could dominate it, you could understand it. So I think it's all about that, and especially now with the technology that we have, we're all users. We're not producers of that. We don't really understand it. It's so abstracted from no one. I look at my husband works in AI, and when when he's working on his algorithm models, I don't know what he's doing. It looks to me like black magic. I don't know what he's doing. But at the same time, I've started because of that to take a class in in computer science for stupid people like me, just so that I understand the basic concept, because I want to make sure that when I get into this world, this new God that we're building, that this God has the same values that I do, that this new world has something that I want to see. So I feel like it's nearly my responsibility to get involved and to open my mouth and say, no, we don't want this, we want that. So I think that's kind of where we're at with this technology, where we really need to understand it and make it useful for us, and not allow Black Mirror, not allow the dystopic view to make us freeze and and not do anything and go back to cannabis or drugs and say that's the way out. Let me just get stoned out of my head and it's all going to go away. No, it isn't.
It makes me think of the broader question or conversation around inclusivity in terms of who are the people that are driving forward the change and are working in tech and are defining what the future is going to look like, and does that reflect those who are often marginalized, and how that then perpetuates the inequalities that we cannot seem to get rid of. So I, in many ways, I am an optimist. I tell myself that all the time because there's no other way to be in this world, to stay hopeful and to kind of keep pushing forward. But I think that's something to be discussed as well, really, how the companies are building and the leadership and having accurate representation across the board. And I don't know how it is in the fashion world, but I assume it's quite similar to.
It is.
It's pretty bad.
It is.
Yeah,
it is.
if you consider in the pyramid of the fashion industry, the percentage of minorities at the top is pretty poor.
I agree.
But just like most big industries, and representation does matter. If you take a look at some of the gaffes recently from companies like Gucci, blackface, what was it, handbags or something, or masks with crucifixes or stuff like that. I mean, it's insensitive, but it's a lot of stuff that could have been handled if people had much more representation within their organizations. But also, I think representation allows people who have had different experiences to put their own thoughts to the table, which means that if you have people of Indian and Pakistani or Ethiopian descent who are sitting in your boards while you're making decisions about how you're going to charge a factory, squeeze a factory so you pay 10 cents less for a t-shirt, you may then have someone who can turn around to you and go, hey, maybe we should not fly so many business class flights and pay these people the money they deserve, rather than continuing to fly business class flights while squeezing people who didn't ask for this type of work, don't really have a choice to do anything but this type of work. So I think that representation matters at all levels, especially in the boardroom.
Yeah. This has been a very informative conversation for me, and I know it will be for so many other people who are part of the GLF community. And I think what I'm taking away for sure, I don't like to shop anyway, so I'll continue to not buy things as I haven't seemed to need them. It's funny because once I started a nomadic life working in the GLF, I lived pretty much out of one suitcase for a whole year, and that's when I really realized I didn't need all of the boxes and the 6 suitcases I had at my aunt's house. I was completely fine with my one thing. And so that's something that, maybe it took an extreme life change to understand that, but it is a lifestyle that I can try to retain, even while I now have a place to keep my clothes. So thank you for that reminder. I think it was very necessary, and to also reflect on how our everyday decisions are it's an opportunity to perpetuate inequality or flip the paradigm. And I think we will all choose otherwise this time. And I'd like to offer you both for any concluding remarks and messages that you'd like to give to the audience. Maybe Christian?
Yeah, and flipping back from my Black Mirror stance to something more hopeful to end with. I read an article by John Monbiot, the Guardian columnist and environmental crusader, that it only takes 3.5% of a population to start shifting mindsets. That's not very much, but it is determination. It takes conversations full of empathy and warmth and not accusation. So go out and be the messenger. Go out and be the carrier of positivity, of possibility, and affect change where you are. Get the people around you to change their minds about how they see their worlds, how important it is for people to understand their rights, have access to their rights, but also to act to protect those rights. And you will see that in a very short period of time, you too can have an impact. And it may not be at global scale, but all the good things at global level start somewhere.
I have to agree with you 100%. And George is one of my go-to people to read about. He had a really great article the other day, again, about how all the greenwashing that's happening in our industry. Just to, I agree with everything Kristen said. And just one more thing I'd love to add. And at the moment, it's a real pet peeve of mine. Sometimes the quick fixes are not the solutions. Recycled plastic is not a solution for consuming more plastic. We need to stop consuming. We need to stop buying and filling the void of need that we have. We need to start doing more. We need to start working more for other people. We need to start believing in this empowerment that there is, that, if we want our selfies to be having all these likes, then use that selfie to make a statement and do something that you believe in. It's an incredible moment to be alive. Our voices are heard. Not only are they heard, we're followed, literally, by all major companies. They're very interested in everything that we're doing. We're the lab rats of the future. So then let's show them what humanity really wants and go and do and be consistent with the way we think. So be consistent. Think about everything you do. Does it go with your life view? Is this how you would like to live life? You don't want to get paid $3 an hour. Please don't buy a $3 t-shirt. It makes no sense. Try and make something. Try and learn how to make something. That always gives you respect for other people who make. And it doesn't matter where anyone lives. We're living in a global society today. I was in India recently, and most people are making, obviously the very poor, but middle income people are making $800 to $1,000 a month as salary, which is what we're making in Europe today, in Southern Europe at least. Numbers are not so different anymore. Cost of living is not so different anymore. We need to fight for a global solution to fair wage. We need to look at everyone. Problem in Africa is a problem of ours. We've got to rise above this nationalistic way of thinking. I mean, I guess Kristen could say, I don't know about you, but my background, I'm a nomad. I was born in India, grew up all over the place, and have finally chosen Europe as home. I can tell you that no country is different. I can tell you that we all want the same thing, and that we've got to stop thinking so much about raising borders, but more about erasing borders as we go forward.
Thank you so much, both Christian and Kavita. I'm really grateful for your time and your energy and really breaking this down for us and sharing what you're doing and where your passion comes from. And I have a lot of faith that you've inspired some individuals who maybe never paid attention to these things and now have a different, a piece of my vision for the future has now been filled in that I think wasn't there before, and I'm very grateful for that. So thank you so much to you both, and thank you to the audience for joining us, and keep in touch. I think next week we have our digital summit on gender and forestry and restoration, and how we can start securing women's rights in this space as well. So thank you so much, and have a lovely day.